Joining us now from The Athletic, his deep dive was a must-read today. It was the first thing I read this morning when I reached for my phone. As soon as I awakened, Aaron Rodgers, the Packers, and the long succession, quote, just tell the truth. You wanted to move on. It's a quote ascribed to Rodgers as I guess, elicited by the author of The Athletic's story, Matt Schneidman, right here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Matt?
I'm good, Rich. Really appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
And I appreciate the information you put out there for all to see. And what really had me at hello is I saw you spoke to Rodgers on this very subject and recently. When did you speak to Aaron on this subject matter?
I did. Over the past couple months, I had gathered, stories, information on kind of what has gone on here in Green Bay over the last 3 seasons, more so from the Packers' perspective. And I didn't anticipate Rodgers responding. I just figured, we've always had a cordial relationship in my last 4 years covering him here, but I anticipated he just wanting to move on, which I could have understood. But I reached out to him last Wednesday. He got back to me in a couple hours, said, yeah, I'll talk. We finally connected in between his 2 visits to Taylor Swift at MetLife.
Okay.
And talked for about 30 minutes. I believe it was Saturday. And I made it very clear to him at the beginning of the call, I would take everything he said on the record with his name attached unless he clarified otherwise. He's smart. I'm not trying to trip him up or anything or pull a fast one. And everything was on the record. And as you know, since you've talked to him plenty of times over the years, he speaks his mind. And as reporters, we appreciate that.
No, I know that. And he must like you because he says in the piece that he only speaks to people that he likes. And I'm assuming you FaceTimed him. Did you FaceTime him, Matt? Did you FaceTime him?
I did not.
Okay.
But I will say he was on the East Coast at the time I talked to him on the phone. According to him, it is only when he's in Malibu when you need to FaceTime him.
Well, and in that regard, that's why he was saying in your piece, and what he has said elsewhere as well, by the way, he's consistent, that's why he and Gutekunst maybe didn't connect, is that, the Packers knowing where he was and the issues that he has with cell reception in his Malibu spot, that they should have FaceTimed him. And the thing that I really took from all of that is that clearly something dysfunctional is in place if the general manager of the Packers is in Los Angeles to scout players at the NFLPA Bowl, if you will, and Rodgers is sitting in Malibu and there's no set time and date to meet. That they're just like, I'll just text you when I'm in town and we'll see each other when we see each other. I mean, come on. I mean, what gives on that front? Matt, that seemed weird to me, to be honest.
Yeah, we all certainly have our beliefs on what really happened, who's in the right, who's in the wrong. With this story, I just tried to get both sides and get out of the way myself and let everyone else, interpret it however they want. Now, the way it went was basically they connected via text, ironically enough, before Goody went out to L.A., Malibu, whatever you want to call it, in late January to scout that bowl. He was then, I believe, going to head elsewhere on the West Coast, but they arranged kind of a rough time to meet. And once Goody got out there, he was not able to get a hold of Rodgers. When I asked Aaron about it, he said life happens, and then said he was busy with some other stuff, but wanted to meet with Goody, but it never happened. And the way it was described to me was, was this offseason and their disconnect and their inability to connect the only reason they traded him? Certainly not. That's why I covered a couple of years in my story. But I think it was more of a last straw with Rodgers, kind of dealing with him the last couple of years, combined with the fact that they are, both privately and publicly, really optimistic about what they have in Jordan Love.
No, and I understand that. It just struck me again as writing on the wall in what you hear. Rodgers didn't want to be there anymore, and I don't think the Packers wanted him either. Like it was time. Like it was finally time to go separate ways, and Rodgers is in a better spot. Even he says that he feels that there's better communication, I imagine, with the front office, Joe Douglas, and even Woody Johnson than he had with Green Bay. That's what he told you, right, Matt? Correct?
Yeah, I think there are a couple things to this. He told me that when they drafted Jordan back in 2020, Aaron thought he had 1, maybe 2 years left on his deal. He said many times him winning 2 straight MVPs changed that. So to me, that means he thinks the Green Bay was just looking for their first out. Now, there were a couple outs this offseason. He had kind of a down year, which obviously the broken thumb factored into that. His contract provided an out because although it was a 3-year extension, it was essentially a 1-year deal with an out and then 2 more years tacked on if he wanted to keep playing in Green Bay. And then the other out is they think Jordan Love's finally ready for the first time. So one interesting thing that Aaron told me was in his exit meetings, he stayed in Green Bay for about a week after the season, and he told me that the Packers told him they wanted him to stay, that they wanted him to retire a Packer. Then the phrasing Aaron used with me was something changed in February. Now that, inability to connect was kind of in between that. So that was probably the last straw. And then everything about, the darkness retreat and him coming out and finding out from his agent that they were shopping him. And then at that point, Aaron said, Dave Dunn, his longtime agent, you just deal with Goody. I have nothing else to say. And the line that everyone's running with, and I was kind of a little taken aback when he said it, but this is another one of those times Aaron just speaks his mind.
Mm-hmm.
He said to me, he essentially thought the Packers wanted to move on all along. He thought Goody just didn't like how little they communicated over the years relative to other people. And then the money line was Aaron saying, I talk to people that I like. Explicitly saying he does not like Brian Gutekunst, which I think we all could read between the lines over the years that was the case.
Well, wasn't that also confirmed by your reporting on the 2021 demand that it's either Gutekunst who's gone or he needs to be traded, Rodgers, through David Dunn? You reported that. Can you walk me through your reporting there, Matt?
Yeah, I had heard from someone associated with the team who has knowledge of that request that Dave Dunn essentially called Mark Murphy early in the 2021 offseason before Schefter broke on draft day that Rodgers wanted out, and that kind of shocked everybody because he still had 3 years left on his deal. But Dave Dunn called Mark Murphy early that offseason and said, you either fire Brian Gutekunst or trade Aaron, and Mark said neither. And then I asked Aaron about that, and he said, I don't know if that's accurate. You need to ask Dave about that. In my 4 years covering the Packers, I'm like 0 for 162. I'm exaggerating on contacting Dave Dunn. So he didn't respond. But I will say, I'm reading between the lines here a little. There were a couple things Aaron and I talked about that he strongly denied. One of them being the Packers not being pleased with his effort over the past 9 months. And he obviously pushed back against that. He did not push back against the fact that Dave Dunn, gave Mark Murphy that ultimatum. And let's be real. Dave Dunn isn't giving that ultimatum on his own. That's a directive from Rodgers. So Rodgers has said in the past that he never, I don't know the exact wording, but he never tried to get Brian fired. Okay, well, maybe he didn't, but your agent did. So Aaron's smart enough where he can work his way around that. But in my mind, I don't think I'm reading too far ahead that Aaron kind of deferring to his agent on that and not straight out denying it like he did. Other things means, yes, Dave Dunn did kind of request that ultimatum.
Well, and again, this is all just, excellent food for thought and great fodder, certainly to talk about on the last day of May. No doubt about it, Matt, because, look, no matter how awful this sounds or awkward it sounds or difficult it may be for Packers fans to hear, this is nothing. Like literally the Favre departure from Green Bay is holding this beer. There's no question about that. Correct. And Favre wound up becoming part of the Packers family again. That's the way this thing is going to wind up being one day, don't you think? Unless you did you get a sense from Rodgers that can't happen with Gutekunst around? There's not enough water and the bridge isn't high enough. What's your sense on that to tell Packers fans of what you may have gleaned from this conversation there, Matt?
Yeah, I think one thing that I found interesting was when he came back for the 2021 season, after that offseason of staying away, we were all told publicly and even privately, everything's fine now. Both sides, Rodgers and the front office, that is, made efforts to mend fences. So everything's in the past. And then in my discussion with Aaron last week, he seemed to make it apparent that only Russ Ball, who's their director of football ops, who manages the team's cap, was really the only member of the front office who made efforts to change and accommodate those things that Aaron wanted changed, the culture inside the building, treatment of outgoing veterans, Rodgers' input on personnel decisions that directly affected his job. So I don't think as much progress between Rodgers and Gutekunst were made as it seemed.
Yes.
But I say that because if Aaron was still kind of at odds with the GM, and he was able to play the last couple seasons and, in his words, give it his all and be on good terms with mostly everyone else, I'm assuming, I don't see any reason why, even if Gutekunst is here, 3-5 years from now when Aaron comes back here, whenever he comes back to be remembered, that he can't put those feelings for the GM aside and have everything be harmonious. Because let's be real. He made a lot of people money here. I'm looking at Lambeau Field right now. I'm at OTA practice right now. The reason this area is so beautiful around here right now is because of Aaron Rodgers. He's arguably the best player in franchise history, and I don't think a little bit of friction with the GM is going to get in the way of properly remembering that one day, despite how unceremoniously things ended this offseason.
Matt Schneidman of The Athletic here on the Rich Eisen Show. And to be honest with you, I guess how everything plays out might also play into whatever rapprochement might actually happen between Rodgers and the Packers. How it happened, how Love looks, and obviously what Rodgers does with the Jets. Did you have any conversations about the here and now with Rodgers about his new digs in New York and how long he might think about staying there and how he's feeling and things of that nature? Anything on the Jets front that you can shed light on from your conversation?
I know he's happy. Randall Cobb has said it publicly, and I got the sense from my talk with Aaron that he's energized, happy for a new start. I myself am from the tri-state area, the New York City, Connecticut area, so I know that getting into a new city like that and getting out of Green Bay can maybe sometimes reinvigorate you. I love Green Bay, don't get me wrong, but New York City's my home, and I have it in the story, but one thing that I thought was funny, because sometimes Rodgers just can't help himself from taking shots. We were talking about kind of how the communication between him and Gutekunst only somewhat improved when he came back in 2021. And then Aaron snuck in a line saying, but it's nothing like what it's already been with the Jets in my 3 short weeks here. So he's loving it there. He's appreciated. He's getting more of what he wants than he did here. But I will say one thing really quickly that he did add as a caveat was he understands that there's this hierarchy here in Green Bay. Front office, for the most part, makes personnel decisions. Coaches coach, players play. There's no real blurring of the lines there as there may be with the Jets or other places. And while Aaron would have liked to have it differently, he does certainly understand that's how it traditionally works here, even if he doesn't necessarily agree with it wholeheartedly.
And then what about Love? Was that a bet hedge, the way that they didn't pick up a 5th-year option but just gave him another year on the contract that is less than? And what's the sense there with Love? Because the Packers are on national television, just like Rodgers would be the quarterback there. It's not like a bet hedge from the league and the schedule makers. Green Bay's all over the map. We're going to see this play out in front of us nationally all year long. Matt, what's your sense there?
Yeah, I think there was a slight hedge because 3 of their 5 primetime games are in flex territory. So if Jordan Love stinks, they kind of have some flexibility there. But listen, they're cautiously optimistic, I think is the best way to put it. They really like what he gives from an intangible perspective and also his on-field skill set. But everyone acknowledges you don't know until you're thrown into the fire and face that adversity. Same was true with Aaron. He wasn't very good his first season when the Packers went 6-10. And that's why you heard Matt LaFleur, when we sat down with him in Phoenix at the owners' meetings, say, don't expect him to play like Aaron. We got to temper our expectations for this kid. The Packers are very publicly cautioning everyone who's expecting anything near what Rodgers gave this franchise. I think they're prepared for some bumps. Is this going to be a playoff team? It's possible. The NFC is not very good, especially considering the proven pieces the Packers have around him on both sides of the ball. But they like what he has both tangibly and intangibly. And I think just the general sense is everyone is refreshed and energized with the new blood, the young blood, and a new era here in Green Bay.
Matt, thanks for the call. Again, great piece in The Athletic today. And, Rodgers isn't going to tell that side of the story very much anymore, I don't think. Maybe he'll tell Pat or, we get him on here if that ever happens, or anybody else nationally. He might entertain the subject again, but not to the depth that he did with you. So congrats on that. I appreciate it that you come and add more meat on those bones. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Rich. An honor to be on. Thanks for having me, and enjoy the rest of your day.
You got it. That's Matt Schneidman here from The Athletic, right here on The Rich Eisen Show, covers the Green Bay Packers. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.